Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. My name is Ronnie Smith, and I am joined today by Howard Gibbs-Hobgood, also known as Water. And Howard, Water, is someone that I met, uh, I think, after the Woodstock Fruit Festival, or perhaps at it a number of years ago. It's a little hazy in my mind as to when, but I was certainly in New York with him for a period of for perhaps a few days or whatever it was. And he was back at the Woodstock Fruit Festival this year, and he's been helping to keep the community together with the WhatsApp group and group calls and things like that, which I think are probably private for that group. But just to give you some context of what he's doing and he's playing a role, I believe, in wanting to bring community together around this lifestyle. So I'm looking to learn more about water and water. Let's start from the beginning. In fact, is there anything you would like to say about yourself as an introduction?
Yes, if it was the first Woodstock Fruit Festival we met, it was probably about 6 years ago, possibly seven, and did hang out after that. I remember going to Woodstock Fruit Festival a couple of days then, not the whole week. I was so impressed by how people um, lit up on a week of living foods, and that energy continued into the week, as it did this last um, January when I attended the full Woodstock Fruit Festival, and I did it intentionally to check out if raw vegans really do make better community members, and I've determined they do from my own independent testing. Um, and yes, my intention in going this time was very particularly to gather raw vegans together. Um, the WhatsApp group that you mentioned, I actually want to make it open to anybody on the raw vegan path. So do feel free to reach out to me. I can give my information, phone number if that's helpful now and maybe at the end.
Sure.
I really want to gather us together. Um, my phone number on WhatsApp is it's America, so 1917 371 7289. Again, 1917 371 7289. Feel free to ask me to add you to the group where we're discussing, not debating, raw veganism and trying to and keeping it as upbeat as possible. I'm finding I'm having to moderate that a good amount and still finding our direction in terms of how we communicate when within raw veganism there's so many different approaches to something that is still 0.001% of the population. It's incredible to me.
Mm-hmm. And how would you introduce yourself? Is there anything I missed out about you you'd like to share?
Great question. I grew up in New York City, born in Manhattan at age 5. I continued growing up in the Bronx. Love the Bronx. People are real. Um, but New York City has its edge. Somebody have told me in some places people um, are polite but not so kind. In New York, people are kind, but they're not so polite. I've worked on becoming more polite over the years since traveling a lot, probably traveled maybe 15 to 20 years of my life, living in Brazil, a little bit in India, Europe, Italy especially is my favorite. Um, Central America, Mexico, and across the states a few times, Boulder, Colorado, Hawaii. Um, so I am trying to become a world citizen as much as possible and not as much of a New Yorker while my heart is still beats from the beautiful energy of the Bronx. And dad of two adults, young adults, 25 and 22. Um, and started my raw vegan journey about 22 or 23 years ago, um, out of noticing a need for deeper healing than I had attained at that point. Not in terms of disease, but I can talk more about that in a bit.
Hmm.
Really, And really at this point in my life, I'm really fully embracing and recognizing that y'all are my people. It's y'all are my people. And I want to do what I can to support online raw vegan communities or people that are aspiring to it, wherever they are in their journey. If it's something that they want to do ultimately, like every single one of Earthling's creatures in all the history of the planet, eating living food, um, then you're part of my community, and just keep going forward and celebrate our successes, not our, our failures. And particularly, I would love to find a live-in intentional raw vegan community. I want to live with raw vegans. Um, yeah, I really want to live with raw vegans, and then work from there in terms of helping the world heal in terms of the planetary diet.
Mm, mm. So I would like to start off by asking you, you know, most people were not brought up on a raw vegan diet. I assume you were not. So how did it start off for you, your lifestyle, your upbringing?
Single mom, single mom, not a lot of money, but super loving. My heritage, I mean, she's Anglo-American, like I guess British American, like sort of Scottish, I guess. Maybe with some Irish and maybe even German strains, but mostly England and Ireland. Yes, those two go together. And um, and my father's African American, though I didn't meet him till I was 15, and that was a slow grow in terms of our relationship. So my mom didn't. She was a school teacher, an occupational therapist, but also an artist and a pianist. She played piano as a hobby, but she was teaching full time, raising two kids, an older sister and I, um, and didn't have the time to cook. So pretty much, I'd say almost as young as 6 or 7, I started cooking my own food. And frequently, as I got older, cooking for her. TV dinners were a norm. The crappiest food we could find in the supermarket is what we ate. Dinty Moore beef stew, corned beef hash, canned spaghetti. And whenever I had any money, sometimes I would pilfer some money from my mom. I thought it was coming to me any way I could. Eventually, I realized that wasn't right. But we all go through our growing pains. I would go out and buy a ton of Drake's cakes. A ton. Drake's cakes are like apple pies coated in refined sugar, Twinkies, Yodels, Yoo-hoo as a drink. I would wash them down with sugar. I would wash sugar down with sugar. Yoo-hoo is a chocolate drink. Um, oh my God, Sunny Doodle cupcakes, cinnamon buns. That was breakfast, lunch, and dinner very frequently, even into my 20s. I remember, having a pint of milk and a bag of Pepperidge Farm chocolate chip macadamia nut cookies for breakfast every day, every single day. I was trying to develop a morning routine. Um, and and I did. And eventually I was like, man, I kind of feel tired afterwards. So I kept the cookies and I changed the milk to orange juice, and it helped. I really didn't take a clue then. It was years later. But that was really up until, I mean, pretty much until the time I was 30. And around 30, like maybe my early 30s, is when um, uh, I had a family. And I started to just wonder, well, why am I waking up every day and not feeling so great? Soon after waking up, I wouldn't wake up feeling bad. I'd wake up feeling great. But an hour or two into the day, I didn't feel great. And I didn't know what it was: food, exercise, meditation, friends around me. Really fascinating. And for some reason, being in Brazil has always heightened my healing journey. I don't know why.
Mm, mm. Did you experience any health issues growing up that you noticed, or were you in pretty good health as a child and so on?
I was what seemed to be normal health. Um, yeah, nothing I really noticed. In fact, I only noticed my my compromised health and wellness after I changed my diet.
Hmm. And that's interesting. And what was you mentioned it was your family. So what was the kind of um the first moments like of you starting to explore changing diet, go to a healthier diet? How did you do that? Was it did you meet people? Was it books? Was it information? How did that process happen?
Neither of those. I'm a little amazed at my dietary journey. It at this point, 23 years in, it seems it was ordained, as I believe all of our lives are, provided we live up to them. I do think that the choice is ours to live up to them, or else we have to come back and repeat them in order to learn the lesson. Diet was one of my core lessons, and it was the turning point of my life from night to day. Really, honestly, it is the focal point because it's the activity we do that chooses what we become physically, mentally, emotionally, and I would say spiritually, because our body is a filter for a vessel, but oftentimes a filter and quite clogged for our soul. So I would say choosing what we eat is the most powerful act we can take in terms of awakening.
Hmm.
What was it like those first days? We were in Brazil, as I said. I think we lived in Brazil for 4 years total, 2 years and then 2 years later. Um, this was this was maybe the first 2 years we lived there. And as said, I'd wake up and I'd feel fine. I'd be looking forward to the day. And this might have actually been, I don't remember it particularly, but it might have been a day, probably was a day when I woke up feeling extra good. And I was really looking for, those days, the sun's shining, and you're like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to have fun with my family. I'd say looks beautiful. And it was maybe 2 hours later that I'm like, why does today suck? Why does today suck? I feel like something sucks that isn't, a natural part of the day. There was just some kind of indicator that like something changed. And I hadn't attributed it to what I ate for breakfast, which could have been, you know, bacon and eggs at that time, could have been, a bread to cheese sandwich or peanut butter and, jam on could have been anything, anything bad for sure. Hadn't connected it to that. So I actually started to, I think I reflected that day, like, what's wrong? Why does my mood change when I felt so good and plummet to feeling so moody? I'm not in a great mood with my kids. I don't have the energy for them. And
Hmm.
oftentimes it takes other people to inspire us to change, people we care about, that we're not showing up for as much as we want to. And for me, it was absolutely my kids, and probably my partner as well, but my kids especially because they're so innocent. But it could be anybody, your mom, your dad, just wanting to come with energy. And I wasn't. So
Hmm.
I was, I was just something is wrong. And as said, I didn't know if it was exercise or so I started trying those things. And exercise was cool, but it didn't have this kind of lasting, sustenance. I still kind of felt like I'd take hits. And, trying meditation, trying calling friends, trying all sorts of stuff. But it wasn't until I tried the most boring food I could have imagined at the time, the most uninteresting, least attractive, and certainly the least addictive food I could imagine. And that was starting the breakfast with a smoothie. Ew. Ew. Effing ew. Like, oh my God. That was the last I didn't like fruit growing up. I mean, even people that I know have unhealthy diets like fruit. I didn't. And salad, I always would wonder, why do people eat salad? It's like the most, I'm sorry, I'm just going to speak honestly from that perspective. It's like the most tasteless thing of leaves. Like, why, when you can have like a chicken leg? I'm sorry, but this was my perspective, and I'm going to be really honest. At the time, like I could have a chicken leg smothered in sweet, tangy, orange chicken, Miss General Chow's sauce, or smothered soul food chicken with crispy, I could mac and cheese, like savory, salty, and I loved all that, especially carbs. Like, why on earth am I relegated to a smoothie? Why on earth is lunch relegated to a salad? And I read this book around that same time, and I think on some level it connected the dots for me. Sugar Blues, written in the 50s or the 60s, really old school book, but really short, quick, easy read, done first person. Um, so it's just you're just reading somebody's story, really easy to do. And it Sugar Blues, it really made the connection between food and mood for me
Mm.
by really giving a lot of evidence and first person narrative about depression and how sugar is at the root of it. And once, one finds that one food item impacts them powerfully, they have no choice but to look at them all. And I was really sort of a blind man without a stick walking backward toward diet. And I just, through years of trial and error, realized stopping refined sugar and eating a smoothie for breakfast, just a smoothie, and a salad for lunch, any dressing or relaxed dressing. So probably cooked, but no sugar. I avoided sugar in the dressing. Um, I would also avoid dairy. It wasn't an ethical path for me. It wasn't
Mm.
an animal rights path for me. For me, it was, how am I treating my family? How can I make it better? How do I want to live and feel? How can I make it better? Wow, food is really impactful. How can I make it better? And gradually, my first phase of being a raw vegan was eating raw till 5. I know some people do 4. For me, I got off from work at 5. So that was a good stopping point for it. I saw how the day went on a smoothie or fruit for breakfast, but most of the time, in the beginning, it was actually juices.
Mhm.
Um, I would just juice, pull out a juicer and juice fruit that just tasted good. It had to taste good for me to go that way. And eventually, I moved to a smoothie that was mostly bananas, strawberries, and orange juice was my favorite. Got to drink it quick because it gets bitter. And then salad, I would have raisins and avocados and some nuts on the salad. I'd like it to be a chunky salad, so I felt like I was eating a steak, even though I wasn't. And after 5 p.m., I wasn't doing it for ethical reasons. I still ate meat for years.
Mm.
And, but I would usually break um, my 5 p.m., daily raw vegan diet with a bag of pretzels. Gluten was big, big on the menu. Or I would go grab, a few slices of pizza. I could almost eat a whole pie, but I would do that. And I'm really grateful for a kind of a foresight that I had. Um, that like my inner child who grew up on, you know, tater tots and Drake's cakes and TV dinners and canned food was not going to stand for going 100% pure. It would not allow it. It would not last. I knew it. It was so obvious. And so there was a kind of a foresight that I don't remember usually having, particularly then, in being reasonable and saying to my inner child on some level, because I do think that any addictive change is a dance with your inner child.
Wow.
It is absolutely establishing a, a humane, compassionate relationship with your inner child, saying, listen, I'm going to ask you as an adult to do this, even though you don't understand why, because for you, you just notice how things taste. You don't notice how they feel the next day, because it's the next
Mm.
24 hours that really determines, what you ate feels. And if you follow that, 3 hours later with another meal, and you have no idea what's doing what. So I'm going to change my diet before 5 p.m. That's what I'm going to do. You're going to hate it. It's going to be salad and fruit. I'm sorry. I'll try to taste that as much as possible. But at 5 p.m., whatever you want, whatever you want to go to McDonald's, I'm with her. I'll bring you to McDonald's. I'll bring you there. But before 5, for 2/3 of your day, for 2/3 of your meals, you know, try doing something you never did before, and try doing something that bores the crap out of you, and is not something you at all would pick. Just trust me, and I'm pretty sure from what I've been learning, you're gonna feel better before 5. And slowly, 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 my friend, you're gonna start to feel and see the difference before 5. And as you do, I'm hoping you'll be excited to join me in pushing it past 5 p.m., reducing the amount of bread eventually, going for a whole day into the next day until 5. And then eventually, maybe it'll take years because we're doing this alone. I don't really know. I'm just experimenting. Nobody's helping me. There's no YouTube channel that I'm following. Maybe you and I can go to one cooked meal a week or two. You let me know when you're ready, when you feel easeful about making that choice. And particularly, and I think this is really important for change, when you're in a happy place in life. Happy meaning your work is decent, or your partnership is decent, or your friendships or your community is decent, or your creativity is decent. When you're in a decent place, or maybe other aspects of your health are decent, and you don't feel like life is a challenge and a burden, but
Mm.
you feel like life is maybe something a little exciting, those are the best times to push forward with um, with addiction. Any addiction, I would say, is when you're kind of happy. And the more happy you are, the stronger you'll be. And then set, roadblocks, set rewards. For me, the key was finding a place when I was happy, pushing forward. It's kind of like the ocean and surfing. You don't surf between waves when you're being pulled back in the ocean. You surf when the wave is going forward. And forward motion is happiness. And so I was kind of riding the waves. I set up this scheduled reward system for my inner child. And I think that's kind of a way to approach it. I'd never recommend people go 100% raw vegan. Never, because those that do last 6 months, 2 years. But at a certain point, they're going to eat with family, and there's such a pull with family or with friends, or just someday be going through a rough day or a rough month or 3 months or 6 months. It's not likely on a raw vegan diet. It's much less. But life does still throw me curves. I was amazed. I'm sorry, I'm going on. I hope
That's
it's
great.
okay.
That's great.
I was amazed at how, okay, I'll go into results. I was amazed at how happy life became once I stopped sugar and ate a smoothie for breakfast and a salad for lunch and anything for dinner. Once I even made that change, I was amazed at the fact that I had actually been mildly depressed, sometimes more than mildly, continually. I found a happiness I had never experienced in my entire life, when I was, in my 30s. And I I not only recognized like a joy in my being, and I would see at work, like I did, theater carpentry at the time, building like these stage sets or building these little miniature animatronic moving things for, department store windows for Christmas. It was a really fun job, not a lot of purpose in it, but it was really fun. I would see coworkers like drop like flies around 1 or 2 p.m. after lunch, and I would be going stronger after a day of work and a day of a smoothie and a salad. I would just see it consistently. I'd be like, I got the secret. I got the secret. And it would also be good for me to touch on my enthusiasm, my over enthusiasm in a minute. Um, but the two things I was amazed at when I changed my diet to 2/3 raw vegan, and that's not a stopping point, but I do think it's a wonderful transition, particularly when it's scheduled. Um, my emotions were just so much brighter. The sun shone even on cloudy days. I was just happier. And this lasted for years because I did it till 5 for years. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 or 4. The other thing I noticed was that in addition to this awakened, consistent joy, that I didn't have these weird moods where I acted like a fool or felt bad. or depressed. Life got better, experiences got better. I started to gain this confidence in both areas that I was going to show up happily and say things that lifted people's spirits. And I did so consistently. It grew this tremendous confidence in me of, wow, I can make people happy consistently. I just have to be careful, particularly when I move to multiple days after treat night. The day after treat night, I should be a little mindful because I can get into debates, I can get into like sort of the weeds. But when I'm eating raw vegan food, my life is consistently predictable and positive in terms of my mood. But also, I consider what we eat to be either a prayer or a curse. What we eat is a prayer, right? And it could be either positive or negative, depending on the offerings we give our temple.
Mm,
Our experiences change, our external, what we attract into our lives in terms of somebody doing something to us, a problem, getting a speeding ticket, having an accident. Um, I feel, and I've learned over 23 years of actually having raw veganism, for multiple days and then treat night for one night. It's actually, it's manifestation. Eating is manifestation. It's not conscious specific manifestation where we're calling in something specific, but it is a general manifestation of calling in positivity or negativity in terms of experience. Every time I would like fall down on my bike, it was always the day after treat night. Once I was having treat night once every 3 days or once a week. Treat night being pizza or whatever I wanted. Um, Always the day after treat night, I would be careful about driving or riding my bike. And I'd also be careful about my conversations. I'd be careful about everything, and I would always have a greater degree of patience.
mm,
Um, um, which also indicates why so many things in my childhood happened that were more akin to a curse than a prayer. And it's because I didn't know. I had no idea that what I was eating was actually creating my future energy for 1 to 3 days,
mm, mm.
and longer, really, in terms of cellular level, in terms of health and a sort of depression. Um,
Wow.
Yeah, that's that piece. And I can talk about my over enthusiasm in a bit.
Yeah, something I'd like to ask you, Howard, is you're I mean, I would say you're a fantastic communicator. I don't know if that's a gift or something that you've developed, and you seem to have a really unique perspective and way of looking at things and way of analyzing things. And I'd be curious to hear about maybe your education, philosophy, spirituality. Like you just seem to have a very interesting way of looking at life and mindset. I'd be curious to hear more about that.
I appreciate that reflection. It feels like a compliment, and I've learned to take compliments in and sort of digest them and really move forward with gratitude and gratefulness. It's kind of an indicator of a good path. Um, well, my mom, as busy as she was and as exhausted as she was, and as little as she knew about diet and healing, she did know about love. And she still was oftentimes too exhausted to really give love. That's not entirely true, because moms always, find a way to let you know even when they're exhausted. Um, she was a gorgeous communicator, and particularly those times, those moments, I'd say, when she wasn't exhausted from work and raising two kids, who themselves had issues, particularly at the time. We were kids. She was a very astute communicator. She would sometimes say things. She was from New England. I mean, her family goes way back to the Mayflower. My mother's family goes back to the Mayflower. My father's family goes back to the slave ships. There's something in that mixture that I think really helps me in terms of experience. My mother's New England, she was raised by an educator, a man who started a school. Eagle Brook School for Boys. It's now like thousands strong and feeds like the Ivy League. So she had a really strong education.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and she would always, in the midst of arguments, you know, I'd be like, well, there it goes, there it goes. And she'd be like, it's not going anywhere. You know, like it's just like, this is an argument. This isn't an English lesson. But she would always like point these things out. And you know, in that is a communication to work on communication, you know, say things properly, speak correctly. I would say my own dietary change, my own healing sort of cleared the muck through which I would communicate with people. That also, and the confidence I gained that I spoke to earlier, where I just saw myself showing up with light so much more consistently, you know, based on the light that I was imbibing. Cause like, man, like the sun is right above me. These plants are nourished by the sun, you know, and water, all the core elements of life and light. And we're imbibing them without destroying them, without we're cutting out the middleman of fire. I mean, fire is a consuming element. You know, how on earth did we get to the point where we're feeding nourishment, life, the sun and water and plant life to fire before we feed it to ourselves? What are we worshiping?
Mm.
A destructive force? Why do we have so much firepower in our nations,
Mhm.
particularly the ones that eat the worst? Um, so I would probably attribute communication skills. My father was very meticulous. The more, you know, from age 15 on, when I met him, we connected more and more slowly. He was very astute about how he chose to say things. He was a Virgo, if people believe in astrology, which is very, very conscious in terms of what they do and what they say, very earnest. So he helped, you know, beyond that. I would say growing up in New York City and dealing with 8 million people was a wonderful gift, at times awful, but most of the time wonderful, because though they don't have nature in New York City, they do have human nature. And I think New Yorkers are very astute at at dancing with others. Sometimes dysfunctionally, many times dysfunctionally, but ultimately functionally. Um, and the functionality really improved when I changed my healing practices of diet and other things. But the Bronx, the Bronx is badass, and the Bronx is badass because people in the Bronx are real. People, they show up, and whoever they are, you pretty much see it right away. So that's kind of the long answer to the communication aspect. Spiritually, I looked into Buddhism early on. It was the closest thing I could find that didn't constrain me and other beliefs, because I knew that whatever belief I went for, it couldn't be, well, let's just say it couldn't be judgmental of other beliefs. You know, that was my main checklist for any spirituality, is it has to embrace the fact that other people aren't wrong, you know, on other journeys. And so Buddhism was an initial attraction. Um, Gradually, I almost magically, while on this journey, I discovered Malidoma Somé, who is from Burkina Faso in West Africa, an initiated shaman, elder. He would always say everybody is a shaman. It's just a question of how we um, how much healing we've gone through, I guess. Um, he introduced me to really, I see 99% of our history as existing in within the continent of Africa. So I see we really all are Africans. And I also believe we're all indigenous, um, looking for our village, you know, but we exist in this giant machine. So most of us, unfortunately, I feel are lost, as was I most of my life. And this is why I'm really looking for community now. But I would say that my spirituality, um, at this point, is probably more indigenous than Buddhism, than Buddhist. And if I were to choose one of the major religions, I like Judaism. that seems to be the oldest and in many ways the wisest. But I've hung out with the Quakers for multiple years, like 7 or 8 years. They gather together in meeting every Sunday for an hour in silence until anybody in the congregation feels moved to speak by a spiritual message. And to me, the egalitarianism of that and the humanitarian quality that they have as originally a Christian form of spirituality, which then branched out into Christian and not really Christian. That it's not just the Bible, it's just believing that God is love,
Mhm.
which is their principal belief. Eventually came back together, when which religions do that, um, to then just agree that God is love. And some of us will be Christian and have a programmed worship. Others of us will have, more open beliefs and a non-programmed, sitting in silence, waiting for a message to come through anybody form of worship. Love them too. So I don't want to negate any religion, because I think the ultimate point of religion is to help people come together in community over something that cannot be proven or disproven, and that is faith. Faith, I think, is the driving engine of people coming together. It's only when they impose themselves on other people or other beliefs that I feel they're crossing a boundary.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. And I'd like to get back to the health side of your journey. And as you were instituting the Roswell 5 program, and you mentioned a number of benefits, were there any other immediate benefits you can think about that transition, and what actually made you do a smoothie and a salad? Like, why did you go towards that?
Wow, that would have to be a memory piece. Um, I think I started with juicing, and I think I did juicing for a few months, maybe a few years, until I realized, well, I'm throwing away an essential part of the fruit by juicing, even though it's delicious and easy. So let me try making smoothies. And I gradually found, I couldn't have done it without flavor, without finding things that really tasted good. Why did I start with the juice? Let me go further back, though. This isn't necessarily answering your question yet. I would say my health journey really started in my early 20s when I lived with two friends, one of whom was a vegan. Maybe both of them were a vegan, but one of them was very verbose. He was a singer. We played in a band together. And he would always tell me, "You're drinking Tang? I can't believe how you eat." And I would always tell him, "It has preservatives. I'm working on my longevity." Um, and I knew I didn't believe that, but it was, like, lay off, leave me alone. But he did ultimately talk me into trying a fast, which I did. It was tremendously difficult, and I broke it with, I remember, bacon and eggs and toast for breakfast the next day. I was like, I've earned this. I've earned this. And maybe that was also my lesson in going raw till 5, is I realized that in order to do something great, I have to to go from something terrible to something great, I have to cater to the demon of the terrible a little bit. I've got to, I've got to, I've got to feed the demon of the terrible, um, and thank them for letting me go for a day. That's so weird. I've never put it that way, but in a way, it's honoring. In a way, it's honoring the past, and in a way, it's feeding the past so I can go forward to the future. Um, Yeah, and so him talking me into fasting, I really got to give thanks to him, because I think fasting is actually maybe even better as a tool for moving towards raw veganism, because fasting is strengthening the ability to say no. It's like going to the gym. And really the key thing that we have to do with any addiction is strengthening our willpower, strengthening our ability to say no to a society that offers us all sorts of poisons, in terms of like sitting in front of the computer, being on phones, watching the news, addictive emotionality, rage, films that are violent, and of course food and inactivity, sitting in front of a computer, like we're doing now. But this is for a good purpose. I don't know what led me to juicing first. It might have been seeing something in a book. Um, I don't know what led me to a salad. I really don't. It was the salad was certainly the food I hated the most. Um, couldn't tell you.
Mm,
Couldn't
mm,
tell you. Um, other benefits from it? Well, I was happier with my kids. I was a better father. I was a better husband. I remember going on a 5-day fast with my partner, um, and just sort of sitting there, in the hammock, and the three of them would just like look at me and they're like, "Never eat again. Never eat again. You are so easygoing. You are so." And I've changed a lot over the years. It absolutely took. Okay, the other major change from diet, but this wasn't immediate and it wasn't immediately noticeable. Once I changed what I was eating, oh, many. Before I changed what I was eating, I remember laying in bed for like 2 or 3 hours. I traveled a lot, so I had time to do this and breathing, trying to breathe into my belly below my rib cage, and I couldn't. And I remember trying to focus on relaxing it. I thought it was tension. I had no idea it was almost certainly mucoid plaque. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't belly breathe. And I remember trying, like, why can't I belly breathe? Why can't I know yeah, I've heard that's the proper way to breathe. Years later, I noticed I was belly breathing. I
mm,
noticed that, I'd cleaned my diet enough that the mucoid plaque gradually exited. And there was a time I was trying enemas and not so much colonics. And I think it's arguable whether one should do that or not. Um, it's even arguable whether one should juice or not. But I still think with juicing, less arguable. Enemas, I mean, putting water up your butt. I mean, coffee enemas. I did try that a couple of times. That's unnatural. No animal, you don't see an animal with an enema bag in nature walking around like, yeah, I'm just doing my thing, doing my
mm.
healing. On the other hand, we're the sickest animals on the planet, and extreme disease does require extreme healing sometimes. So I try not to negate people's healing journey, as extreme as it is. I would just hope that the more extreme it is, the more temporary it is as they move back to the center. And the center is the primate diet. Like, just, ideally climbing trees, using our physicality, that's our exercise, getting fruits, playing, sharing, maybe like bonobos, making love in all sorts of gentle and kind and beautiful ways, and integrating physicality and food, living food. Um, I guess the benefit that I was getting to over years was, I think, as you heal, particularly your physical body, there's a certain point where emotionality comes up as the last frontier for healing. I don't know that it's the last, but for me, it kind of looks like one of the biggest remaining, or it looked like one of the biggest remaining hurdles. And that is, why am I acting out in this relationship? Why am I feeling abandonment? And getting therapy. I got EMDR therapy for 2 years. A healed body calls for a healed mind. A healed body calls for a healed heart. It absolutely does. Your cells have no place to hide, or the things in your cells have no place to hide. And this planet is a healing planet. This life is a healing life. We're here to heal. We're here to grow. We're here to connect with love, and become love. We're here to become love. And when we fully become love, I believe we no longer need to be here. And as I'm still breathing, I'm still healing. Um, I had to do, yeah, emotional work in terms of going through my childhood trauma. And I feel a lot of it has been healed. Like, age 4 was a particular time where I saw and experienced some pretty horrific things. I'd say like 3 or 4 experiences that all happened in the same apartment, except for one, that a 4-year-old really shouldn't have dealt with. And that was still in me. That was still a fear in
Mhm.
in my relationships. And the nature of trauma is that it keeps on acting out in your life until you actually at least in my case, revisit it and heal it. And EMDR is a process of either tapping or using eye movement to stay present while you're going through the traumatic experience verbally with somebody else, so that you have a foot in both realities, the present and the past trauma. And it's beautiful because that chasm between the two of those is a beautiful place to cry. Because that chasm between the two of them is one that you bridge. I felt oftentimes when I was in the midst of EMDR, I was actually going back and helping that child in real time then, in real time then. And it was amazing to me to think, oh my God, I made it through that horrific time. And I can share it. I'm totally open to sharing it because all of us experience trauma to a degree. Totally willing to go into what happened. I don't get triggered by it, although it could trigger others. Um, I actually survived those times because I actually saved me from the future because there is no time, you know.
Wow.
And I do think, you know, I mean, in the real world, and in this world, we're sort of dancing with time, but there's ways I believe of bypassing it, you know, in terms of presence and presence and presence, because, you know, God is timeless, you know. So yeah, EMDR was a very healing experience for me on the heart level. And that was, I definitely attribute that to opening up my body enough with living foods, that the
Mm.
living foods then were an ally in terms of me having the energy to heal my past. Haven't yet worked on the ancestral stuff. I'm sure there's some stuff there. I would love to do a past
Amazing.
life regression.
Amazing. So how did the journey go deeper diet wise? When did you start to remove some of the other things? You know, you mentioned McDonald's or pizza or whatever. When did you start to refine it more? And I'm curious as well, did you meet other people that were doing it? Was there any places you could go to learn about it? Any connections like that happen, or was this always mostly a personal journey?
It was mostly a personal journey. I can't really, in the first 10 years, really remember anybody who was on a similar journey.
Mm.
I probably could have and should have been more proactive about finding them. The beauty of raw till five, but then especially when one can expand it to raw, a cooked meal every 3 days, let's put it that way. Raw till Thursday or Wednesday. Um, Having a cooked meal every 3 days was really insightful because then because raw till five was cool. I saw that I was good through the day, and then I'd hit something. But food stays in you for 24 hours. So even though I was raw till five, I was still dealing with last night's treat night, just not as much because I was giving myself living foods
Hmm.
to sort of supersede it. Um, when it went to 3 days was really impactful. I'd say it was kind of an epiphany. I started to really see what the food did because when I would eat a pizza, let's say 6 slices of a regular cheese pizza, I'm in New York, that's what I do, or that's what I did. It was my favorite treat night for many years. I would go back to raw vegan for the next 3 days, and I would see the first day, like, oh wow, today's shaky. I feel like I'm ready to get into an argument with somebody or debate somebody about why they should go raw vegan. I feel like I just felt this kind of shakiness. I want to say in my shoulders, just this, but energetically, not a
Yeah.
physical sensation, but just this thing that wanted to come up and out of me that was a little mildly demonic. I'm trying to diminish this term demonic because we're dealing with it all the time. It's not, you know, it's like a snake, it's like a bee sting, you know, it's not the best analogy. It's it's a gradation, you know,
Hmm.
and depression is a bit of demonic. It's a bit demonic, and disease is a bit demonic. I'm not doing a good job at diminishing it, so forget it. Um, I would just notice how impactful the pizza was once I went to 3 days raw. between every cooked meal. And then I would see the second day, it was much less impactful, but still impactful. And then the third day was finally the day I would feel it would clear in a noticeable way. I especially noticed that once I moved from to cooked foods once a week, a cooked meal once a week, I would really see that cooked food stays in my body noticeably for 3 days, my body and my psyche, but always diminishing. The first day, very clear. And that's when I started to say, like, okay, like, how frequently do I want to do treat night? And what do I want to do for treat night? Let me start looking at the choices I have on treat night. Now, I like to tell people that this basically when we go raw, we're facing not one addiction, we're facing 7 addictions. And there's more. Other people can talk to you about salt and oil and vinegar and other things. But for me, the main 7 addictions I focused on were sugar, wheat, dairy, meat, alcohol, caffeine, and
Mm,
cooked.
mm,
All of those were addictive.
mhm,
All of those were toxic. Not, yeah, you know, they were debilitating. And the beauty of the raw till 5 diet, and particularly once it moved to 3 days and 1 week, is that's when I have an advantage over people that go 100% raw. I get to see how those cooked foods, the pizza, the burgers, the pretzels, or those 7 toxins, because I would change it: potatoes, rice and beans. I was still eating meat, steak, cheese, how they impacted me. And I actually started to experiment. There was a period where I explored cheese. I was like, cheese actually, I find is a much better treat night than, sorry, y'all, bread. It was less impactful. I don't know. I'm not talking ethically. Ethically, I think there's a lot to be said for why it isn't, and it's worse, and what it does to the animals. Um, and I don't know what the long-term effects are. It's hard to see 5 to 7 days out. Meat and cheese may well be pretty bad because of what they're doing karmically. The experiment continues. But in terms of physiological and emotional impact, they were less damaging than most processed foods, I'll say. Certainly than sugar, and certainly than gluten, than bread products, particularly like sandwiches. Oh God, I had a ham and cheese sandwich maybe a year ago. As recent as that, y'all. Sorry. And I wanted to see. It was the first time I had it in years. I tried it the next 3 days. God awful. God awful. So what I started to do for treat night was try to go for mono meals. I did continue meat for a while because I found it less impactful. Sometimes I would have some salmon, just salmon alone, maybe with a salad. Sometimes I would put beans on a salad. That I didn't consider treat. I considered that cheat. But I did that minimally. Um, Sometimes I would have a block of cheese with my salad. That would be treat night. That would definitely be treat night. But it was a very mild one, I found. It was only once I went to the liquids and the powders, the processed foods, that I really started to notice, like, oh man, I'm a mess
mhm.
today. And yeah, longer than that. There was something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember. I so appreciate you letting me just
Sure, sure.
go on.
Um, so what would be a typical day for you now, or a typical week? Where have you got to now, and what's the way you look at diet at the moment?
Woodstock Fruit Festival, and I'm sure UK Fruit Festival, extraordinary gifts. Extraordinary gifts. Every single person listening to this, find the closest fruit festival to you. Find it. Find it. You'll know then. Trust me. Find it. A typical day for me now is it's mango season. Soon it'll be watermelon season. Um, I just eat 6 to 8 mangoes in the morning. I would still do a smoothie. Sometimes I do a banana nut smoothie. I'm trying to get away from nuts now. I I'm moving into an ethical diet now too. And I'd say actually after the emotional healing is going to come a kind of a karmic healing. And oh God, so much to share about this. I lived in community in Hawaii for a year and a half. And on that land, I learned anytime I'm killing, I'm actually getting a little bit of an injury. I just
Mm,
started to notice that. And um, I started to look at my diet as an ethical path. This is 20 years in, where I was doing it purely for my mood and the way I felt. So I realized then that I was probably going to have to stop eating seeds, because when one eats fruits and leaves, even leaves, because you can't really kill a tree, but you can't eat enough leaves that you're going to kill a tree. Um, Fruit and leaves are a diet that actually gives life. I know there's so many people out there that pray before a meal, thank you because I have to kill to eat. And it's like, no, you don't. And stop. When who you thanking? and who's thanking whom? You don't have to kill to eat, because when you eat fruit, and particularly if you live in nature or if you find a way to compost, really compost, you're supposed to be eating seeds when possible. But just throwing into the compost, doing a compost toilet, you're actually midwifing trees, and you're joining that
mm,
cycle,
mm,
that magical cycle of earth between mammals and trees, of them giving us oxygen, us giving them carbon dioxide, them giving us fruit, and particularly primates, and us giving them um, baby trees in
mm,
in new locations. I mean, it's such a that's why it's a prayer. That's why eating is a prayer, because you're actually praying to nature. You're actually praying to trees. You're praying to living gods by eating living foods and birthing living trees. You're joining the cycle of nature. So that was really inspiring. The reason why I bless the fruit festivals, um, and for me it was particularly Woodstock Fruit Festival because it was hours from where I was at the time, and they also have volunteer programs, which are really affordable, which and a real blessing. It's so beautiful to invite hundreds of people in, or 50 to 100 people in, to eat living foods, and really clean living foods. It was cleaner than I was at the time. Um, no nuts, no salt, minimal or no oils, I think. And really boring initially when I came in. I was really bored at that first meal. I'm just like, oh, I went right back to my van and ate some nuts. But then the rest of the week I didn't, because I got used to it. Because the thing is, like when you transition, you start to realize, that was addiction. That wasn't low blood sugar. It's not low blood sugar. It's addiction. It's very different. And that week I got so clean. Now, I've learned, this goes into so many areas. I've learned from years of playing with my diet and keeping a foot in both areas. When I go through hard times, I had a real tendency to eat hard foods. I had a real tendency to go to the ice cream, to go to the cooked food, to go to the pizza, because my kid's crying, and I want to give it what it loves right away, solve the problem right away. And it took me years to really recognize that I was actually making the problem bigger tomorrow. And you need to experiment with that. It's a great immediate gratification, but the problem gets worse. And I started to look at problems in my life when I would have treat night, or if I'd go through a binge. Um, uh, Negative things would start to happen. It was so funny. When I was in Brazil, I would sublet my apartment. And I remember I was still in this phase of like still binging for a couple days, eating cooked. I had a family, and it's tough to how we deal with other people is a whole other topic. How do we strengthen ourselves in family and in community, eating differently from them? But I would binge, and then I would notice I'd get an email from my tenant, I'm leaving, this something happened wrong. And I'd be like, oh shoot, well, I know my energy is feeling weird here and weird things are happening to me here. Maybe this is part of the weirdness I'm calling in with my food, with my binging. And I started to get real clean. And always within 2 or 3 days, that would clear up. I wouldn't have to do a thing. They'd be like, oh, I decided to stay. Things are working out. Life, life is like an elevator. It's a very modern analogy, but life is like an elevator. Diet is one of the most powerful tools to choose whether you're living in the basement or living in the penthouse. And when you're in the penthouse, different, there's different, it's a different shopping experience. It's a different living experience. There's different people in front of you. Different experiences present themselves. Sounds incredible, sounds, new agey, metaphysical, whatever.
Mm,
23 years of doing both diets has given me an incredible insight as to what cooked food does. And it was amazing how often and how regularly I was in the basement. And we actually, there's a real beauty. Evil has a purpose in life. Here I go, touching on the evil side, but it does, it has to, because how else are we going to learn? We go running through the forest without looking, we trip over a branch, we fall. Okay, that's a lesson. Pain and discomfort and depression and sickness and quote unquote evil is here to teach us that doesn't feel good. And there's things you can do about it. And I'm here to say, and so are you clearly, diet is one of the most powerful things you can do to transcend evil into love. Diet is the penthouse button on the elevator.
mm,
You don't have to go straight to the penthouse. Go ahead, tap the third floor. Go ahead, tap the seventh floor. But eventually get to the penthouse, because the gift that Woodstock Fruit Festival gave to me, and the fruit festivals in general, was it gave me a week of cleanliness that I was clean like a month before because I was going through a lot of challenges with family. I had to really show up for somebody I love. And so I did no treat night for a month prior, um, because I had to show up for my son. And I've learned that in hard times, get cleaner. In hard times, get cleaner. And if the problem's lasting a month, get clean for a month as much as you can. And then give yourself a reward after. I went straight into Woodstock Fruit Festival after there was a treat night day or two. And I got so clean and I had such a beautiful experience with others that I realized this is a part of my life going forward. It was a way for me to up my game. That's why, y'all, go to a fruit festival. It'll be a chance for you to up your game from wherever you are to wherever you're going to be. Now, and people have told me, going from 95% raw vegan to 99% raw vegan, and particularly to 100%, which I'm almost there, is is almost as transcendent as going from 0 to 60
mm,
or 70. That last 5% is as powerful as the first 50%. And I've experienced that, and that's where I'm at. What's a typical day? Mangoes or pineapple or watermelon in the morning. I don't usually do a smoothie. Um, when I did develop this beautiful smoothie for my kids to get them. It tastes like a chocolate shake. It's made primarily with bananas and cashews. I'll occasionally do that as a treat, but nuts do make me tired. And I do feel that it's because I'm killing trees instead of birthing trees. That's why I got into the whole karmic ethical thing. Um, we have to eat the way nature wants us to eat, or else we're going to suffer, and so is nature. Um, Lunch, I usually do. Sometimes I'll just eat two meals. I'll eat a fruit or a smoothie, and then I'll eat a salad for dinner. Salad, I usually like to put avocados in it, sometimes raisins. I still do a relaxed dressing. I like to get the goddess dressing from Trader Joe's. It's 2.49 and it has a great taste. I still do maple syrup a little bit and I mix it in that dressing. Um, I know there's people shaking their heads like, oh, he still does that. I still do salt occasionally. I still do oils. Um, but it's still primarily to flavor foods. I'm not at the point yet where I just eat salad. I did start eating salad without any dressing the other day, and I was like, oh, this isn't bad. That may happen in the next few weeks, actually. It's really coming on hard and fast. And this WhatsApp group, which I don't want to be a place where people are like, eat like this, eat like this, eat like this, because
Sure.
so many people are in different
Mhm.
places, is an encouragement to me. What you posted there about the plum tomatoes and the lettuce being all you eat, and the personal experience way you posted it, like offhand, not like it didn't feel at all like you were trying to convince anybody. Um, made me think, I'd like to get there, and that's why I did say in my next chat, like, I like that or I love that.
Yeah, it's and the reason that I don't necessarily see that as healthier. I just see it as it's such a simple thing for me. It's so quick, and sometimes for me, I don't like that distance between buying the food and eating the food and making all the preparations. So it's just become a very simple, quick dish for me. But yeah, I'm not trying to suggest other people do it so much. Um, but yeah, you've been moderating that group really well, and I know that it's important for you for it not to be, as you were saying, like a debate, but more of a place where people are sharing, I think, and openly like that. So there's a couple of things I'd like to ask you about, which is one is tribe and community are things that you brought up a couple of times and seem to be very important to you. So I'd like maybe we can talk about that, but also I'm curious as to outside of diet, maybe we can talk about this first. Outside of diet, what are what other kind of health practices do you have or other practices that you use to improve your life, improve your mindset, and all these other things?
You're a great interviewer, Ronnie. Yeah, you hold space very well. You affirm when you feel it, and just really great, you know, leading questions. So thank you. Um, oh, I love this question. The second, I love both. Um, Other practices, I'm at the point now, and I really want to write a book. Meds, 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 M is in Mary. Meditation, exercise, diet, sleep. Those are our meds. Those are human meds. That's, you know, I've added, and there's obviously plenty of healing practices, prayer, affirmation, manifestation. I mean, lately I've been, I've experienced the power of manifestation in a real crisis. I walked around my living room and I verbally spoke. Verbally keeps me focused on the topic. What I was envisioning for, in this case, from my son. It's the first time I really tried it, and I was passionate enough about it to really try it. I've heard about it for years, but just been like, okay, all right, I see this happening. Come on, please, please, please. And I did put it into words, but I didn't have the real desire. It's always other people. It's always other people, and that gets into the community question. Other people are our inspiration. I've started a raw vegan business 2 years ago. That's another topic. Um, with a partner at the time. But when we broke up, and at the time I wasn't in touch with my kids, I woke up and I'm like, but why am I doing this? And we need to do things for others. We don't need to, we can do it for ourselves, but other people just multiply it by four in terms of the power. Um, um, for my son, I started manifesting a reality that was different than was currently happening. And take notes, y'all, because it really worked, and it was pretty extraordinary what it accomplished. Um, I walked in a circle. I spoke out loud because it keeps me focused. I don't know that it's necessary. The vision I was holding present time, like it's happening now. I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it, and I am describing it with all five senses present time. I walked in a circle for 5, 10, 15 minutes, just envisioning it, immersing myself in it. It was a joy, actually, once I did it. It was a joy envisioning it. I was actually there, and I came out of it as though it actually was in existence, because it was. I actually created it. And there's a woman named Dolores Cannon who deals with all sorts of esoteric stuff, near-death experiences, past life regression, and yes, extraterrestrials, which I get it. There's other dimensions that we can't see. We have a narrow range of vision. But she, trust me, in terms of indigenous spirituality, human spirituality, near-death experiences, which a lot of doctors affirm, she is right on the money. She describes how to do it. Um,
Mm.
so that's one practice. Meds, meditation. I did Vipassana for 10 days. I use that as a body scanning. I drop from my thinking into my body and I ask my mind to just relax like a muscle. Um, I find it's the most embodied practice. It's apparently the way Buddha was enlightened. Go figure. Um, ex Exercise. I like to do capoeira. I also like to weightlift because I want to have a body that represents raw veganism. I'm working on it. Come see me in 3 to 6 months. So I do the machines. I don't like exercising like that, so I try to make it a half hour. But yesterday I went for an hour. Capoeira that. Yoga isn't so interesting to me because it's so solitary, but it's a beautiful practice, and I prayers to everybody who does it. Everybody I know does it, so I do it sometimes and appreciate it. Um, Diet, you know all about that. Sleep, um, that's my worst practice.
Mm.
I was up till 4 a.m. last night. I work really well in the middle of the night. I've always been a night person. Even as a child, I would stay up all night and go out in the morning and practice baseball. I love sports as the exercise part. I would love to sleep with the sun. I would love to sleep with the sun. I would love to eliminate Wi-Fi, turn it off in the evenings because I think EMF, insomnia, irritability,
Mm.
and it's probably even linked to dementia. Um, Turn off Wi-Fi at night. Um, Dirty electricity. I don't know much how to solve that, but all those things I do help. A completely dark room, so light blocking curtains. In addition to meds, I have an acronym that makes no sense. RX, well, in America, it means a prescription, so it does tie to meds. Relationships, obviously, we need people. People inspire us, and people are the reason we're here. I do believe we're here to practice getting closer and closer to unconditional love.
Mm.
And that's a place I'm still working and getting better at. I really am getting better at. I don't get angry anymore. That's another result of not having. Most people, I think, get angry because they have acidity in their intestines. I think that's the number one cause of vitriol. Um, yeah, eventually when that goes out, and then when you start to heal your past traumas, then you realize, oh man, my past traumas, no longer an excuse. So I always try to show up and hold space, and meditation really also helps with that. But again, I see the key for me as being not having a body that's burdened down and acidic, spitting out acid into my brain that then has to come out as acidic behavior. Um, RX, relationships X. This gets into a little funny territory. I do believe that it's not healthy for men, particularly. This I don't think applies to women. I've heard it's actually healthier for them to ejaculate. There, I said it. I don't think, you know, E equals MC squared, right? I know it sounds highfalutin. E energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which to me means mass contains such a massive amount of energy. Maybe I'm getting the equation wrong, but so that's why a lot of people go the healing route through affirmation, beautiful, manifestation, beautiful. But the reason why I always emphasize diet is because we're actually eating matter, and matter has so much energy contained. It's really condensed energy. It's like it's energy times the speed of light. No, it's actually energy divided. So I have to figure that part out. But when a man ejaculates, he's actually putting out the ability to create 6 billion lives. That must be an extraordinary energy loss because we have to sacrifice something to put life out there.
Mm.
I'm no
Mm.
longer in our body. So I really do try not to orgasm in that way, and with ejaculation. Taoist philosophy, when they really taking care of emperors, and this is a pretty consistent um, experimentation over thousands of years in China. The power of the empire is the power of the emperor is the power of the empire, and they really studied it, and they're like maximize contact with a woman, or in case of the emperor, women, um, minimize leakage. That covers it for that. And then there's OPP. Um, outside, be outside as much as possible. We're animals. We don't even have fur. We're supposed to receive direct sunlight. It's much more than vitamin D. And then you can feel the energy, the closed
Mhm.
energy of a room, and you can feel the outside energy. That's why I have to live in the tropics ultimately. Um, prayer. There's the manifestation. And there's a P in there, and I'm purpose. Sorry, it's a long answer because it contains a lot
It's great.
to answer the question. Purpose. I think everybody needs purpose. This may sound funny to people that don't really believe in gender because that's become a thing. I love gender. I embrace gender. I love being a man and I love women. But I don't knock anybody else for their choices. This is such an individual journey. We're all just different colored paint strokes. Um, but I personally believe that women have this innate power to create life, to nurture life, and that's such an extraordinary painting stroke. Men men contribute to that, obviously, but they don't really gestate it and embody it.
Mm.
And also with breastfeeding the way women do. So women have this powerful innate ability to create. Men need to create. Um, all people need to create. Both life and in life, relationships, and we're always creating. Every word is a creation. Every breath is a creation. I get that, um, but I think men have a particular need in a way that we need to actually see the results of our actions and have a kind of a long-term contribution to life, to family, to community, um, because we don't have that innate extraordinary godlike power that women have of just the bodies that just naturally create. If God is a gender, and obviously God is all genders, um, God is a woman. It's just so.
And what about the community part of this, which is obviously important to you, and you've mentioned it a number of times. What's your experience with that? What's your plans going forward with that? What ideally would you like to manifest with that?
I've traveled probably 15 to 20 years of my life. Probably dragged my kids around more years than I should have once they reached age 10, because kids need roots. Um, but working on turning that into a positive. And it wasn't until I got to Hawaii maybe 5 years ago, right after Vipassana, that I got in touch with a raw community out there, called Gaia Yoga, um, and realized the whole reason I was searching the world with my family was to find our village. The whole reason I was traveling so much was to find our village. It wasn't necessarily to find a better culture like I did in Italy, like I did in Brazil, where we could learn so much about just living happily. Um, it was actually seeking my community. And the problem with Gaia Yoga was they also ate raw meat. So that wasn't my community. I was able to be there for a year and a half and learned a tremendous amount. And if one can put up with that, I would say it's a very good community to explore. Ano, who is the founder of it, is a very responsible leader. He walks the walk. He has this philosophy of what he's trying to create. I agree with most of it. Nonviolent communication, clothing optional if you want. He does espouse raw eating, but meat is part of it, but also plant-based as well. Nonviolent communication. Mankind Project has some great healing processes like clearings and withholds. It was a great experience for me to learn the challenges and the tools of community in a year and a half. Um, I've since then realized I need to find my community. I've had two partners since then that became raw vegan in partnership with me and saw the benefits of it. We saw all sorts of things come out of their bodies from every orifice. Um, it just, that's the incredible body's healing. And yeah, women have an extra power to heal in some ways, I think, than men do. I don't know that that's true. It's the first time I've said that, but it was extraordinary to me how rapidly they heal. And don't be turned off by weird stuff coming out of your body. It can only come out of your body because it was in there. It can only come out of your body because it was in there. I had diarrhea for 3 months when I first went, mostly clean. 3 months. And I was like, my God, is this my new way of going to the bathroom? I didn't have to run, but occasionally I did. And it was just like my body was just like, okay, he's eating clean. Finally, time to clean up. So don't be put off by that. Maybe you'll get sick. Maybe you'll feel bloating and farting. That's gorgeous. That's a beautiful sign. I mean, the cells are like, they're shedding. Community. I had two girlfriends that went raw, saw them cleanse, but the relationship ultimately ended and they went back to eating the way they did. One was almost a year, the other one was 2.5 years. Ended about 7 or 8 months ago, maybe 9 months. Um, I realized, particularly in the last relationship, I can't be with somebody who's not raw vegan. It won't work. I think it's what ended my 25-year relationship with my wife. I'm so sad about that. I wish I had known. Um, but with my last partner, I would see every time she would go on vacation with family or friend and eat the way she used to and come back, we would be like this. And I don't mean better and worse. I'm not making a judgment. We would just not be connecting in the same beauty and playfulness and ease that we did before she left. And it happened 10 to 15 times over the course of 2.5 years. And on seeing that, I recognized I'm on a different floor. I'm in a different place. I have my own personal discernment about whether it's better or worse. That's why I chose it. And I'm not going to compromise it for anybody because how can I compromise without? How can I do that? And so the only choice I had was to start realizing, okay, if this relationship doesn't work out, and it was a beautiful relationship. My relationships have also gotten so much better on this journey, but I had to recognize that I need to find somebody who came to raw veganism on their own. Had to do it. I know I'm taking us a long time to get to the community question about the future. Um, but I'm feeling this is all hopefully important to share.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very clear on the fact that somebody has to come to it on their own because if they do it for me, if they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for a relationship, and it only is as temporal as the relationship. It can only feel, and it's so easy to attach it to that. They did get the experiences and they did notice it, but it was hard for them to recontextualize it as a personal experience. They thought it was a diet change within a relationship that was beautiful. And so any partnership I'm looking for is raw vegan. And then I purposely went to the Fruit Festival this past January to really find out if that first experience I had 6 years ago when I probably met you, um, of beauty in the 2 days I attended, because I didn't volunteer. I wasn't in time to volunteer. It's months in advance for anybody considering it, at least for the Woodstock Fruit Festival. Um, it was so expensive, I could only afford to go 2 days. And it was like an early day and one of the last days. And I was amazed at the beauty of the people. I wanted to see, 2 points determine a line. I wanted to see if the second experience of that was going to be as good. And going there and volunteering for a week, I've been to 30 festivals because of my business. I sell raw vegan and vegan food at festivals. I've been at Unison, I've been at Burning Man 3 times, I've been at Unifier, Sonic Bloom. No festival is as beautiful as a fruit festival because you can get some incredible music at other festivals, some incredible artwork and incredible art cars and wild experiences that you can immerse yourself in. Um, but you can't get that kind of beauty in people
Wow.
across the board, and that's the garden we're looking for. The Garden of Eden is within. And at the fruit festivals, you see this sort of almost this, it seems subtle, but it's so powerful because it's so familiar. It's this inner garden of light that people start to grow through the week because they're eating living foods, even if they're coming from a standard meat diet or processed food diet. During that week, you see and you feel such a tremendous change, and everybody's feeling it. And those that are already on that journey, they're experiencing it even higher. Experiencing it this time just made me realize, okay, all this, conversations I've had with my partner about like, you know, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to go find a raw vegan community and try that out. I wasn't at all sure because I know raw vegans are at different points along their path, and I am not at all saying every raw vegan is going to be easy. I'm not at all saying that because they're not, and I've met a few. More of them are. More of them are. Just like more yogis are going to be more centered than people that don't do exercise or do
Mm, mm,
yoga.
mm.
More people that meditate are going to be easier to get along with than people that don't meditate. Health is cumulative. It's not about you do one thing and you're done. It's all about accumulating, accumulating. And I think if there is anything evil in the world, quote unquote evil, because I don't really actually believe that evil exists. It's addiction. Addiction. It's continually doing things that hurt yourself and others. Ultimately, God can't hurt itself. God is just experiencing this. God is love. And ultimately, this is all a play with love and free will for us all to sort of emotionally discern and deal with the limits of time and space and gravity to sort of find how we can be beings of timeless light
Mm.
and love, right? In the face of all these traumas that have been put into motion on planet Earth, on this gravity filled, friction filled, physical existence that seems like we're going to die one day. We're all going to die. You can't get out of here alive. And the truth is, that's when we come to life. That's why I love near death experiences so much. If you listen to enough of them, you see such a common thread. These are people that actually are speaking truly. They're tearing up and they're all saying the same things. So my job is to reduce addiction because I think addiction is actually the root of reincarnation, right? Being addicted to coming back to life, being addicted to this hunger, not believing that life is infinite, not believing in love, falling for it. And oof, I'm getting into some stuff. So thank you. Um, I'm seeking a raw vegan community because that's one of the tick boxes checked. I would also like a community that has open spirituality along the same lines as mine. Um, and I would be looking for people that have actually worked on their trauma, that have actually handled most of their trauma of this world, ideally of the ancestral trauma that's been passed down to them, because that's absolutely been proven as a thing. Past life regression would be a thing. I would love for a therapist to
Mm.
be part of the community who does EMDR. So I would actually like to become an expert at EMDR, and maybe I would be that therapist, at mediation and conflict resolution, because I think that's the key point, um, and really find healing modalities for individuals and relationships. Because the bottom line with community is you can have land, you can not have land, you can have equipment and not have equipment, you can even have a vision and not have a vision, but you need relationships. And the healthier the relationships, the all those other things can flourish. So I'm actually looking for for raw vegans, because we can't have raw veganism is kind of a hard line, because diet is one of those things that is so impassioned and so tied to our emotions and our identity, our mom, our family. Um, it's really hard to find a place of unity. I'm experiencing it in the WhatsApp group. It's really hard to talk about without lecturing, without defending, without holding. Um, and raw vegans are typically people that have also looked at radiation, man-made radiation. They're people that also probably want to work the land. They've also looked at relationships with each other. You know, they're people that have, if you've been born into a society that's fed you cooked foods and processed foods all your life, and you've actually turned a corner as 0.001% of the population and claimed, fought for this diet that nobody around you is doing. Maybe a YouTuber, maybe one friend, if that, then you are extraordinarily gifted at finding truth. You are extraordinarily gifted at finding healing. And you've probably ticked a lot of other boxes. That's why I'm looking for a raw vegan community.
Mhm.
And if anybody knows of ones that are really established, I've heard of Terra Frutis, Pura Fruta, um, Las Cascadas in Costa Rica and Ecuador. I've heard about. I've heard there's some in Bali. Um, if you've heard of ones that, but the videos I've seen show them as like 10 or less, 20 or 15 or less. I'm hoping for one that's more established. I'll check them out. They have like I'm sorry, I'm not talking about all of them. Some of them maybe I haven't researched them thoroughly. So actually, let me withdraw that comment. The one or two that I saw were kind of had a minimal infrastructure and minimal number of people. And I'm hoping for more. If I don't find more, I would be so happy to go and help them build. I have a tendency to draw people in and into community. I know I did for the one I was in Hawaii, and I am clearly very passionate about raw vegan community, and I would do that because it's clearly my purpose is to grow raw vegan community. I want to find my village. I am indigenous. I did grow up in a machine, and it was so painful, and I know others are dealing with that pain, and I'm going to find a way out of it. And those of us who have found a way out of that machine but haven't yet found their way into a village, I so want you, you know, keep doing the work and you know, and let's show up and heal on every level.
I think you said something fascinating earlier on, which was that you traveled so much because you were looking for your village or you're looking for your tribe. And I honestly think when I analyze or think of what is it that draws people to travel, to go to festivals, to do these things, why do people do that? What, it's an instinct that almost everyone has. Um, and yes, human beings seem to be naturally nomadic in nature. But I truly believe in what you're saying that a lot of people they go traveling, even in the raw vegan community as well, they go traveling, thinking that they're looking for good fruit, and I think they're looking for community, and I think they're so I would see people go to Thailand or Costa Rica or somewhere and not go to Woodstock, and I'm like, I think you're getting it wrong here. I think you should be going where the community is, not where, not necessarily where the fruit is, but that was just my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And in your speaking of it, I think I traveled for two reasons. I remember I grew up in the Bronx and I had, a best friend, a few best friends. And by the time I got to college, I was like, why would I ever want to leave the Bronx? Why would I ever want to travel? And I think there was something really beautiful in that because I actually was asking, why would I want to leave the community I have?
Mm.
I liked it. I loved it. I did talk to this one woman in college who was like, "Oh, you got to travel because of this and experience and learning." And it's such a different,
Mhm.
experience. And by the end of that conversation, I knew I was going to travel. And when the first time I did, I was like, "Oh my God, I don't actually have to put up with the things I don't like in New York." So I think people travel for really two reasons. One is to discover what's wrong in their life, to
Mm,
discover what they're putting up with, what in their environment, in their paradigm doesn't have to be. And when I got to Italy, especially, which is my favorite country in the world, followed closely by Brazil, I realized, oh my God, these people live like I want to live. This is a place I could actually live because there's community, there's family, there's love. And it's just so abundant. There's warmth. Even the buildings feel warm and feel like they grew out of the earth. It feels so natural. Um, yeah, I think people travel because they realize something's wrong,
mm,
and
yeah.
they're trying to figure out what that is or what those things are. But they're also looking for what's right. And that is, as you say, I think is their village, is their community.
So how about we wrap this up with maybe you can share how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you? And any last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share with the audience?
I feel I was sharing so much. I was really trying to put it all out there. Um, Getting in touch with me, rawevolutionlife.com is a website. Um, for the business I started 2 years ago. I'm probably taking a break this year, but I would sell mostly raw vegan ice cream, gourmet raw vegan food, by the way. It's some of the food I wouldn't even eat myself. And I eventually sold vegan food so that I could actually give people the journey. I'm not interested in, I'm not trying to convince raw vegans to be more raw vegan or to eat pizza. I'm trying, raw vegan pizza. I'm trying to convince people that eat McDonald's like I did to even understand what raw vegan is and to understand that, oh wow, I can feel really wonderful. Um, so I sell ice cream, a delicious ice cream made from bananas and nuts, raw vegan pizza with cashew mozzarella. I'm plugging a business I'm not currently right now doing, but I'm really proud of the recipes. Um, Cashew mozzarella, the tomato sauce on top of a almond flour zucchini crust with a olive tapenade on top. Those are the two like most extraordinary things. Cheesecake, burrito, um, curry vegetables or peanut veggies in spicy peanut sauce, yada yada. Rawevolutionlife.com. But you can also reach out to me, see if you want to join the WhatsApp group. Feel free. Raw vegan, you can text me 917, US 1-917-371-7289. Um, again, 1-917-371-7289. If you reach out to me through WhatsApp and want to join a group that's not about lecturing, not about debating, just about maybe sharing what we're doing, but it is about sharing like raw vegan dishes, not like our treat nights. Um, and if you want, yeah, I'll, I'll 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 try to post a kind of a disclaimer for it. Um, any other words of wisdom? I don't know. So much of what I shared, like we are love, we are love, having a human experience. We are. And it really doesn't always look like it. Some of the times, most of the time, it doesn't look like it. Sometimes it looks like we're little stars or there's a little star in us, like in the outer space of the darkness of outer space. But that too is beauty. And we're here to gift. We're here to gift that. And I also believe that actually we're powerful enough to move mountains. And but the only way we can do it is by taking on those practices that we spoke of and others that empower our soul's journey on earth.
Mm.
And the way that we do that is by, proper nature. Nature. The more man touches it, the more we should leave it alone. Man can never recreate a tree, and certainly not give food as nourishing as nature is handing to us without any lies, without any, artificial sweeteners saying, hey, this tastes delicious. Eat it. This
Well,
tastes delicious. And if it doesn't taste delicious in nature, I personally don't think we're supposed to be eating it.
well, thank you very much for joining me today, Howard. And That it's been many great messages and lessons, wonderful words, the way you use words, uh, very developed in that regard, gifted, I'd say. Um, so looking forward to hearing more from you. I'd like to just say to the audience, thank you for listening and watching. You're welcome to share this with anyone. If you want to join us on Friday nights, we have our Fruity Fridays group calls, and our
I'll
festival
be
is
there.
in July. And you can go to fruitfest.co.uk for more information on all that. And feel free to message me about anything, info@fruitfest.co.uk. Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you for another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Thank you.
And thank you for your patience and thank you for your time. Yeah, I felt a desire to get a lot in there, and I hope it helps. I pray it
Mm.
helps.